Okay, so let's look at the what we call the zero product property. So what I want you guys to be able to do is do what we did in the previous unit with factoring, but I want you to be able to solve for x. So the way that we solve for x is we factor, and then we set it equal to 0 and solve for x. You must always set, when you have two things that are being multiplied together, you must set it equal to 0. Okay. So here, I'm going to have, if I were to factor this x squared minus 6x minus 9, I'd have two things that are multiplied together. I cannot set that equal to 18. I must set it equal to 0. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to subtract 18 from both sides. So I'm going to make one side 0. And so I get x squared minus 6x minus 27 is equal to 0. And then what I'm going to do, so I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to do the x and I'm going to factor. So I'm going to put negative 6 on the top and negative 27 in the bottom. So two numbers that multiply to give me negative 9 that add to give me 6 is negative 9 and positive 3. So you're going to have x minus 9 and x plus 3, and you're going to set this equal to 0. So what it says is a zero product property now says that I can set both factors equal to 0 and solve. So I get x is equal to 9 and x is equal to, negative 3. So x is equal to negative 3 and 9. Okay. All right, so again, we're going to go ahead and we're going to make one side 0. So we're going to subtract 81x. That's a highlighter. Good job, me. Okay. Minus 81x from both sides. It actually doesn't make any difference whether or not the 0 is on the right-hand side or the 0 is on the left-hand side. So 0 is equal to x squared minus 81x. So I can factor out an x, and I'm left with x minus 81. And I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to set x is equal to 0, and then x minus 81 equal to 0. So I get x is equal to 0 and 81. Okay. Okay, so now, again, the reason why we do this is because I'm going to have to have two sets of parentheses. But if I'm not going to have two sets of parentheses, then I don't always need to make one side equal to 0. But me personally, like, I would make one side 0 for right now. But in this case, so let's be clear. These cases up here, right, here and here, you had two sets of parentheses. So when you have two sets of parentheses, it has to be equal to 0. Here, I just have x squared is equal to 144. So there's no, like, two sets of parentheses necessarily. So what I can do is I can square root both sides of the equation. Okay, and then I get x is equal to plus or minus the square root of 144. So anytime you take the square root of both sides, you get plus or minus. And so you get the square root of 144 is 12. So you get plus or minus 12. So x is equal to positive 12 or negative 12. I'll write negative 12 first. Okay, now if you were to do it the factoring way, let's just do that off to the side. X squared is equal to 144, so x squared minus 144 is equal to 0. This factors to a difference of squares as x minus 12, x plus 12. So then I get x minus 12 is equal to 0, x plus 12 is equal to 0, so x is equal to 12 and negative 12. Okay, so you could have done it that way also. Okay, so now again, we're going to factor. So I have negative 12 in the top and 35 in the bottom. So then factors of 35, so negative 5 and negative 7. Hopefully you're getting better at these. Negative 5 and negative 7. And we're setting this equal to 0. So r minus 5 is equal to 0. R minus 7 is equal to 0. So r is 5 and r is 7. Okay. All right, and then again, if I'm going to factor out like a greatest common factor in this case, I actually have to make one side equal to 0. So I have y squared minus 3y and then minus 28. So essentially, anytime I have like a middle term, a b term involved, I have to make one side 0, no matter what. Okay, so now I'm going to factor. So I have negative 3 on the top, negative 28 on the bottom. So that's a negative 7 and a positive 4. So that's a y minus 7 and y plus 4 equal to 0. So y minus 7 is equal to 0. Y plus 4 is equal to 0. So y is equal to 7 and y is equal to negative 4. Okay. Here, again, make one side equal to 0, so I have x squared minus x minus 30 is equal to 0, because I'm going to subtract. Maybe I shouldn't skip steps for you. Subtract my 2x squared and minus 30 from both sides. So then I would get x squared minus x minus 30 is equal to 0. So then when I draw my x, I have negative 1 on the top, negative 30 on the bottom, so negative 6 and a positive 5. So x minus 6, x plus 5 is equal to 0. So x minus 6 is equal to 0, x plus 5 is equal to 0, so x is equal to 6, and x is equal to negative 5. Because I just solved the equation. Two consecutive odd positive integers whose product is 99. Okay, for now, let me just skip some of the word problems. So I'm going to have you guys skip the word problems actually in the homework too. So we're going to skip example 7 and 8 for right now, just because I want you guys to kind of get practice with the factoring. We'll do some of the word problem stuff on a later date, and I'll re-record a video for both of those. Okay, but for now, that is the end of this lesson.